Hello! Today we're covering sensory and product testing, one of the most distinctly food and beverage topics on this channel. Everything else we've covered asks people what they think or how they feel. Sensory testing does something different. It puts the actual product in front of real people and asks them to taste, smell, and evaluate it directly. By the end, you'll know how to set up a product test, what to measure, and how to read the results. Let's start with the problem it solves. Here's a situation every food company knows well. The team tastes the new recipe, loves it, and assumes the customer will too. But the team has been working on this product for months. They know what went into it, they're proud of it, and they've tasted it so many times, their perception is completely skewed. What actually matters is whether real people who've never heard of the development process, taste it blind and like it. That's a completely different question, and the only way to answer it honestly is to test it properly. The whole philosophy of sensory testing comes down to one idea. Put the product in their hands and get out of the way. Remove the labels, remove the packaging, remove the brand name, and let the product speak for itself. No opinions about the company, no loyalty to a favorite brand, no packaging doing the heavy lifting. Just the product, and whether it earns a positive reaction on its own merits. It either works or it doesn't, and sensory testing is how you find out. Sensory and product testing is a research method that measures how consumers perceive and react to a product through direct sensory experience: taste, texture, aroma, appearance, and aftertaste. The goal is to guide product development and quality decisions with real consumer data rather than internal opinions. It's used every time a food or beverage company changes a formula, launches a new product, or wants to understand how they stack up against a competitor in an honest, unbiased comparison. Every eating experience can be broken down into 5 sensory dimensions. Taste, the flavor profile: sweet, salty, savory, bitter, umami. Texture, the physical experience of eating: crunchy, smooth, chewy, dense, crispy. Aroma, what it smells like: fresh, rich, mild, sharp. Appearance, how it looks: the color, shape, uniformity, and coating. And aftertaste, what lingers after swallowing: clean, pleasant, harsh, or lingering in a way that puts people off. Each of these dimensions can be rated separately, and any one of them can make or break how much someone likes a product overall. Let's build a test for a brand we used in a previous video. Crunchco has reformulated their veggie chip. They've changed the seasoning blend and the crunch is slightly different. 3 questions need answering. First, do people actually like the new recipe better than the original? Second, how does it compare to the category leader, the chip most people in the market currently prefer? And third, is the crunch noticeably different? And if so, is that a problem for the loyal fans who know the original? Those 3 questions are going to shape the entire test design. Before we design a test, you need to know the single most important measurement tool in sensory research: the hedonic scale. It's a 9-point scale that runs from dislike extremely at 1 end all the way to like extremely at 9, with neither like nor dislike sitting in the middle at 5. It's the industry standard for measuring overall liking, and it can also be used to rate individual attributes like crunch, seasoning, or aftertaste. The reason it's 9 points rather than 5 is that more gradations give you more sensitivity to detect real differences between products, especially when those differences are subtle. One of the most important choices in product testing is whether to test blind or branded. In a blind test, there are no labels, no packaging, nothing, just the product itself. You're measuring the pure sensory experience, completely free of brand influence. In a branded test, participants see the full packaging and know exactly what they're tasting. The branded experience captures how perceived quality shifts when the brand is in play. The gap between the two scores is one of the most revealing findings you can get. It shows you how much of your product's perceived quality is coming from the brand rather than what's actually inside the package. Sometimes brands inflate a product's score. Sometimes they suppress it. Either way, you want to know. The second key design choice: does each person taste one product or several? In a Monadic test, each person evaluates one product on its own. It's cleaner, more realistic, and closer to how people actually encounter a food in real life. It gives you the best absolute liking scores. In a paired comparison, two products are tasted side by side. It's more sensitive for detecting differences because people can directly compare rather than relying on memory. That makes it ideal for reformulation tests where the question is specifically, can consumers tell these two products apart and which do they prefer? Use Monadic when you want absolute liking. Use paired comparison when you need to know which of the two options wins. Before anyone tastes anything, you need to make sure the right people are in the room. Screen for regular category users, people who actually eat this type of product on a regular basis. For a food test, you must also screen for dietary restrictions and allergies. This is non-negotiable. And control for factors that genuinely skew taste perception. Time of day matters because people taste differently when hungry versus full. What someone has eaten in the last hour affects their palate. And smoking status matters because smoking affects flavor sensitivity in measurable ways. The wrong respondents produce the wrong results, no matter how well designed the rest of the test is. Here's CrunchCo's test design, a blind paired comparison. The new recipe versus the original recipe, with no packaging shown to either group. Every respondent tastes both products, but the order is randomized. Half taste the new recipe first, then the original. The other half tastes the original first. That controls for order effects, the tendency for people to rate the second product differently simply because it came second. Between each taste, a palate cleanser, water and a plain cracker, which resets the taste buds so one product doesn't bleed into the rating of the next. Then a second comparison, the new recipe tested blindly against the category leader. After each product is tasted, you ask the same set of questions every time. First, overall liking on the 9-point hedonic scale. This is always the headline number. Then attribute ratings, seasoning, crunch, saltiness, and aftertaste, each on their own scale. So you can see exactly which dimensions are driving the overall score. Then a preference question. Which do you prefer and why? Which gives you a direct head-to-head comparison. Then purchase intent. How likely would you be to buy this? And finally, the open-ended questions. What do you like most? What would you change? Because the numbers tell you how people scored it, but the open-ended tells you why. Sample sizing for sensory testing is smaller than a typical quantitative survey, but you still need enough to detect real differences. Aim for 75 to 150 respondents per product for reliable hedonic scores. For a paired comparison between two specific products, 100 per pair is a good practical minimum. And make sure your sample is demographically representative of your actual target market, age, gender, and where relevant, ethnicity. Flavor preferences vary significantly across cultural backgrounds, which matters a lot in a category like snacks. A sample that skews heavily towards one demographic group might not reflect how the broader target market will respond. How do you interpret the numbers that come back? Here are some general benchmarks for the 9-point scale. A score of 6 or above is generally positive. People liked it. 7 or above is strong performance. 8 or above is exceptional and rare. But here's the important nuance. The absolute number matters less than the comparison. A 7.4 sounds good in isolation, but means very different things depending on whether the competitor is scoring a 6.2 or 7.8. Always anchor your scores against something, the original formula, the category leader, or an internal benchmark, and always check whether a difference between two scores is statistically significant before acting on it. Here's what the test revealed. The original recipe scored 6.9. The new recipe scored 7.4, a half-point improvement that's statistically significant. That's a genuine win. But when we compare the new recipe to the category leader, it scores a 7.4 versus the leader's 7.8, still behind by 0.4 of a point. Meaningful gap, but not insurmountable. Now look at the attribute scores. The crunch rating on the new recipe is lower than expected. People notice it's different, and the open-ended answers explain exactly why. Less satisfying snap. That single phrase from the open ends is more actionable than any number on the chart. The R&D team now knows exactly what to work on. Let's be balanced. The strengths of sensory testing. It measures the actual product experience, not just what people say they prefer in the abstract. Blind testing removes brand bias and lets the product earn its score on its own merits. And the results are directly actionable for R&D and reformulation. They point to specific attributes that need work. The limitations, the controlled testing environment doesn't perfectly replicate the real eating occasion. People taste chips differently in a research facility than on a couch watching TV. Sample sizes are smaller than typical surveys, so very small differences may not be detectable. And sensory preferences genuinely vary by culture, age, and individual. A product that scores exceptionally well with one demographic might not translate to another. Read the results with that in mind. 6 things to take with you. Always test blinds first. Remove brand bias so the product has to earn its score. Use the 9-point hedonic scale as your baseline for all liking scores. It's an industry standard for a reason. Choose a Monadic testing for absolute liking scores and paired comparison when you need to know which of two products wins head-to-head. Screen carefully. You need the actual target consumer in the room, not just anyone who showed up. Include attribute ratings alongside overall liking because they tell you which specific sensory dimensions are working and which aren't. And never skip the open-ended questions. They explain what the numbers alone cannot. Get all of that right and you'll walk out of every product test knowing exactly what to do next. Thank you for watching.